And audience, welcome to the first.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passport. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Student living there, which And audience, welcome to the first segment of the Bubb Report. Let's take two on that. And viewers and listeners, welcome to the first segment of the Bubb Report. Now we are joined by Ghanaian YouTuber and content creator Kobina Wodemaya Akan, who is currently visiting Grenada as part of a tour of the Caribbean region. Now Wodemaya's goal is to connect Africans across the diaspora and help them know each other and to showcase the beauty of every country that has an African presence. Now, his presence in Grenada was first brought to the Grenadian people's attention when he posted a photo on his popular Facebook page, indicating that he was in the country, having arrived on island via a JetBlue flight. Now, over the last 9 years, I can't believe it's almost a decade, Wodemaya has built a niche through engaging storytelling, collaborations, and travel features across his various digital platforms. Now, his dedication to his craft has helped him build an audience of just over 2 million people across YouTube and Instagram alone. Now, Wodemaya started vlogging when he was studying aeronautical engineering in the People's Republic of China, initially creating videos about his experiences as an African student living there, which eventually led him to focus on bridging the gap between Africa and its rich diaspora through his YouTube channel. His moniker, Wodemaya, itself comes from a Chinese phrase meaning, oh my God. Now, as a result of his documented visits to several African and Caribbean countries. He has managed to interview a plethora of diplomats, entrepreneurs, and cultural icons. Notable on his list are former President of the Republic of Ghana, John Kufuor, renowned Kenyan lawyer and Pan-Africanist, Professor Lumumba, and the chairman of Air Peace Airline, Alan Onemaya, a CEO of Inson Vehicle Manufacturing Company Limited, and of course, the Caribbean's own Mia Mottley, who is, of course, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Barbados. We're happy at this time to be joined by Wodemaya as our first guest for this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Wodemaya, Akwaba to Grenada, my friend.
That's it. That was a brilliant intro, man. I was like, wow, that's so beautiful.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. And welcome to Ghana, outside of Ghana, which is Grenada. Welcome.
Facts. Thank you so much. I mean, yesterday, I actually experienced the Independence Day, celebrated the Independence Day with you all. And I look left, right, middle, center. All I'm seeing is the Ghana colors, the red, yellow, green. I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm in Ghana. And I shared the exciting news with people, and they were like, where are you? Are you sure you're not hiding in Ghana? I'm like, no, this is not Ghana.
Are you sure you're not at Red Square in Accra?
That's what people were thinking. Like, I'm somewhere. This is not Ghana. This is Grenada.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome. Now you've made your way around the Caribbean. You've been in Trinidad and Tobago. I saw you in other islands. Of course, it seems as though you fell in love with Trinidad and Tobago a lot, so much so that you're going back for Carnival. I've been following you, sir. I've been following you.
I don't know.
I'm a fan.
I don't know what I'll be going for the Carnival again this time around. But
okay.
Let's see whatever comes up, you know.
Yeah, so just a quick icebreaker question. You studied in China, so I suspect you speak some Mandarin Chinese.
Darren, what Darren会说中文？
你讲中文吗？我也是讲中文。
我当然讲中文，你听懂我？
但是我不是在中国学中文，我在台湾学中文。
在台湾学中文也可以，
对，
台湾也可以。
Very well. So we have something in common there. And in fact, when I was in Taiwan, I was part of a group called Pan-Africana. It was a drumming and dance group that was actually the director is from Ghana himself. So, you know, I had an opportunity to meet some Ghanaians over there. Now, let us talk, Wodemaya, about the role of African vloggers like yourself in uniting Africa and the Caribbean. And really what you're doing, in my view, is bucking this long-held colonially created divisions that the colonizers have done successfully for hundreds of years, where they've been able to divide Africa and the Caribbean, and of course, Central and South America as well, when in fact, we have so many ties that bond that were broken by colonialism. So let's talk about that work that you're doing.
Yeah. So basically, I realized that we don't know ourselves, even as Africans. I started making videos in Africa, showcasing Africa in a positive light, and also just allowing Africans to get to know themselves within Africa. And while I was on that journey, I realized that, oh my goodness, that people reaching out for me from the Caribbean, and they were like, you know what, we do exactly the same thing in the Caribbean. And I'm like, personally, I don't even know. So why not just take a trip to the Caribbean myself, just to go connect and bridge the gap between Africans in Africa and Africans in the diaspora. And you won't believe that when I came in here, the similarities were mind-blowing, man. I couldn't believe that after 400 years of slavery, people are still connected back to the motherland. And the saddest part of it all is that most of them didn't even understand or know that what they are doing actually came from the motherland. So me coming in here, connecting the dot, I think a lot of people fell in love with me, and it's been an incredible journey. So when I got a call that I had to just come in here for the Independence Day, I mean, I got a call in the morning, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I bought a ticket, 11 o'clock, I was on the plane.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let us talk about that. You know, many Grenadians who visited Ghana, including myself, say the same thing. So there is a woman, a fan of the show, Sue Patrice. She runs a travel company that takes Grenadians and other Caribbean people and Africans in the diaspora really to Ghana as part of that homecoming ancestral trip. Of course, you know, the former president, Nana Akufo-Addo, he has done a lot around ensuring that Ghana can capitalize on the homecoming initiatives. But one of the things that even myself and Grenadians say when they visited Ghana was as if they felt as if they arrived in Grenada. And that's how I felt when I was in Ghana. In so many respects, the language, the mannerisms, the food, how people greet you, you know, everything felt as if I was home, and it really felt home.
We're just the same people, and that's exactly how I feel in here. Like, personally, I don't even feel like I'm in another country. I feel like I'm back home. The people are just the same people, warm heart of the people. I mean, the colors, the national colors of this beautiful country. It's just like the only thing that was missing is the black star.
The black star, that's right.
That's the only thing that is missing. But guess what? Since we have more black people living in here, it still represents the black star, because the black star is more like the hope of Africa. And if you will know that the black star actually came from the Caribbean. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
The black star in the Ghana, the black star in the Ghana flag is from Marcus Garvey's Black Star line of trying to take 400 million African in the diaspora back to Africa, inspired Kwame Nkrumah to take the black star in our flag.
Yeah. So what do you think Kwame Nkrumah would think of what you're doing now of blessed memory?
I think he will be so proud of me. He's definitely going to be so proud of me, because I've seen people connecting my work to Marcus Garvey and Kwame Nkrumah, and I'm like, you know what? For me, I just feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, because I feel like my people needs to get to know each other. But if people start comparing me with Kwame Nkrumah, and I'm like, those guys did a lot, I'm just touching the surface, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, you know, in the context of Pan-Africanism and that post-colonial struggle, Kwame Nkrumah was, in fact, one of the forefathers of the movement that also inspired the Caribbean, because as when Ghana with that post-independence movement, post-colonial independence movement, so did the Caribbean, you know. So he is certainly a very important figure in Pan-Africanism. Now, you said you saw some similarities with Ghana and Grenada. Can you talk about those similarities and what you saw, what you've been seeing? I know it's early days yet, and I'm sure there's a lot more for you to see.
I think the first similarity that I saw was literally the people. The people. I saw somebody who looked like me.
Yes. that might be a cousin, you know.
Definitely a family member that was captured and brought in here.
That's right.
That's literally the first thing. And another thing that I saw, that after being here for past few days, how you see people selling artifact, like more like on the roadside, you know, selling like souvenirs on the roadside. If you go to Africa, everywhere in Africa, roadside, you see people selling souvenirs. And that is something that I picked up from here. I think literally you guys love God. It's like Christianity is inbuilt in the people. And I saw it during the Independence Day. After the Independence Day celebration, you guys held a concert where they were praising God before they started the whole festival. Literally, that's exactly what we do in Ghana. I cannot talk much about the similarities because I've not done a lot, but
I know you've not done a lot, but those initial impressions, yes.
Exactly. From tomorrow onwards, I'm definitely going to do a lot of connection. And I think everybody's talking about oil down, and I've seen how oil down is being prepared, and trust me, I can connect it with the food back home, but I don't want to taste it for now. I just want to taste it on camera and give the real-time impression.
Give that real-time live impression, yes.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, you visited several Caribbean islands.
Yeah.
And what strikes you about the Caribbean that causes you to always come back to the region in the way that you do?
The fact that the people just look like us. There's similarities in our language. There is similarities in our food. I mean, everything that you do in here is us. Caribbean is more like home for me. It's more like there is culture in here. Take me to Europe, take me to America, and I'll be like, okay, is that all? But bring me in here, bring me to the Caribbean. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm home. You know, I can be in the Caribbean for like 6 months without getting tired because it still feel like I'm back home in Ghana. I mean, 2023, I spent 6 months in the Caribbean and people were begging me, come back home, come back home. I'm like, don't disturb me. I'm home already. I'm home already. So that is what makes me feel so happy whenever I find myself in here. Literally, there's no place like home, and the Caribbean feels so much like home for me. I mean, when I was in Tobago, you won't believe that there's a food that they call it kokonte, and in Ghana, it's the same name that we call it. And they eat kokonte with kalaloo. And I was like, do you know that this food is from the continent? There's like, no way. I'm like, we have the same name for it. And they didn't even know it. So it's just the similarities that makes me keep coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the context of food. Now, when I was in Ghana as well, I tried the hibiscus drink. Now, when I tried the hibiscus drink, I said, but no, we have the same thing, except we call it sorrel, right? But in Ghana, you guys drink that every day, almost every day in Ghana. Whereas in the Caribbean, it's sort of seasonal. So yes, you talk about those culinary delights. So in essence, you don't have to leave. You can stay here. You know, take out your Grenadian citizenship.
That is what I think I can just use your platform to request. His Excellency the Prime Minister of this beautiful island. Please, I'm one of you now. I think it's about time for you to give me my citizenship. I think the people can start voting for that, man.
That's right. I would vote for that. I would vote for that.
I just feel like, it's about time for me to represent the Caribbean very well because, listen, I will be coming back over and over again in order to connect us, bridge the gap. But, it's so difficult coming in here. You always have to get a visa to the UK, visa to United States before you come in here. So I think I'm just hoping that maybe one of the prime ministers will wake up and say, like, hey, we need this guy to help us, project our Caribbean region to our fellow brothers and sisters on the continent. So a second citizenship won't be bad, man. And I want the second one to be in the Caribbean, for real.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things you spoke about was just the reaction you get from the Caribbean. What has been the reaction back home in Ghana to the work that you've been doing, not only in the Caribbean, but in the way that you are really connecting the African diaspora around the world?
I think Africans in Africa are even shocked because when I came in here, they could not believe it. I mean, let me just give you an example. When I posted yesterday about I'm in Grenada, Africans were like, where is Grenada? That's the first impression. Now, when I posted a picture with Black people around, they were like, that's Africa. And I'm like, no, this is not Africa. This is the Caribbean. I feel like the connection that I'm doing right now is making so much sense to the extent that when I go back to Africa, they call me Mr. Caribbean, because Mr. Caribbean, because I think through my videos, a lot of people have been able to learn a lot. The culture, even people are connecting dots that I didn't know. Let me tell you something. This is something that I found out. When you go to Jamaica, they have ackee and saltfish that they eat in there. Yes. If you go to Ghana, I'm sure when you went to Ghana, you never saw ackee and saltfish, people eating ackee and saltfish in Ghana. So the question is, how did ackee and saltfish, or ackee, the fruit itself, move from the continent Africa to the Caribbean? So during transatlantic slave trade, people were taken from the northern part of Ghana. So from the northern part of Ghana, they eat ackee. So they put ackee in their hair and brought it to the Caribbean. But those of us living in the South don't eat ackee. So there was no connection from there until I came to the Caribbean, found out that, hey, why is it that us living in the South, we don't eat ackee? And the Northerners were like, please, we Aki is everything for us.
Mhm.
So you went to Asin Manso. They told you
Yes.
that people took their last bath in Asin
The
Manso.
last bath. I actually went to that river. Yes, it
Thank
was a
you.
very moving experience.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So those guys were taken from the north, walk all the way over 300, 400 kilometers just to come and take their last bath. And then from their last bath, they put them in the slave castles, waiting to be shipped to the Caribbean. So there's a lot of connections that even historians are not telling you until I came to the Caribbean. So I feel like when you go to Ghana, one of the best places that you need to go is actually the northern part of Ghana if you really, really want to trace your roots. But because even Ghanaians themselves don't know this history, so no one is talking about it.
So when you say the north, are you talking about the Kumasi area? Is that the area?
No, that's like the northern region. The northern region we call the savannah. We call the Wa.
The Wa. Okay.
Tamale. Wa. Upper east, upper west part of Ghana. There is even like a slave market called Salaga Market, where they used to trade, buy slaves from there, walk them all the way to the southern part of Ghana, and then waiting to be shipped. But you know, people don't know this history. I mean, let's talk about like the Black Americans. They're so tall. But if you go to Ghana, you realize that Ghanaians like myself, like most of us are short. But the north part of Ghana, Burkina Faso, sharing the border with Burkina Faso, they are tall people.
People from Niger as well.
Thank you. So people now, when I came to the Caribbean, that's how I was able to make all these connections. But when I was in Ghana, I thought like almost every person that was brought to this part of the world is from the south of Ghana. But literally, they were from the north of the country.
Yeah. No, and that is so important because, again, for me as well, in Ghana, you know, and just some very subtle things. So in the Caribbean, we have a way whenever we are annoyed, we do this. You suck your teeth. We call it chups. And I remember in Ghana, and this was in Accra, because you know the traffic in Accra is just really bad. And our driver just kept saying, you know, right. You know, and I'm like, well, how does he know this? And so when I asked him, he said, well, that's what we do here. And I said, well, that's what we do back in the Caribbean, you know? And so that alone is just one of those things. And it's just there. And I think it's important that the work that you're doing is so important in respect of documenting those cultural connections that were not lost
you see,
as a result of colonization and slavery.
I don't know if you guys have minibuses in here. I've not seen it yet.
We have minibuses, yes. So, and they all have names.
Exactly. So I went to Jamaica and then I think Guyana, and I'm like, last one, last two, one already, you're going, last one. And then people in Africa were like, where in Africa are you? I said, this is not Africa. This is the Caribbean. You know, because we have the same culture. That's what we do. And it's exactly the same culture that was brought to this part of the world. So I'm just saying that the similarities is uncanny, and it's about time for us to do our possible best. I feel like with the prime ministers, president, they are doing it more like on a diplomatic level. But I'm not diplomat. I just want to do.
You are a man. You are a roots man. You're a man on the ground.
Thank you. That is the way forward.
That's right. Now, one of the things you spoke about was just how difficult it is to get from Africa to the Caribbean. You have to go to the global north, and then from the global north, you have to head south, right? When you know, that is something I think that really needs to change, because again, we have much more in common as people of African descent in the diaspora and people of Africa to us than the Europeans, the Northerners who essentially, their ancestors oppressed us.
I think it's about time for Africans in Africa and Africans in the diaspora start having all this trade agreement in order for us to connect each other. And I believe that we have started it in terms of coming in here, just to let people know that we are just the same people, that if you want to go on a vacation, instead of going to Dubai or go to the global north for vacation, you can actually fly to the Caribbean. So first of all, we just need to get to know each other, get to know that, I mean, you can actually have fun in this part of the world. And then we can start having the conversations of investing in direct flights from Africa to the Caribbean. I mean, it's really not easy. It's about time for us to break that Atlantic triangle, because trust me, during slavery, it was more like a triangle. And even after slavery, we're still going that triangle in terms of moving from Africa to Europe and Europe back to the Caribbean. And it's about time for Africans to break that, because you see, my problem with Africans is that they're always looking up to the West to change their stories. But they forget that they can put their resources together to change their own story. I keep telling Africans that the West is not your friend. I mean, China is not your friend. We are our own friends. It's about time for us to start trading among ourselves. If we can just think about it and be like, hey, this is my brother in Africa. How do I connect my brother? Then we put our resources together. Even if we have to get one airline that moves once in a week, trust me, slowly that route will be built. But we're all waiting for a white savior to come and save us. And I just hope that someday we wake up and smell the coffee ourselves.
Absolutely. And you speak there about the West, and for hundreds of years, the West has been telling very distorted stories, in essence, in many respects, dividing us, right?
Yep.
Because you still have these stereotypes, and I hear it all the time, and sometimes I have to correct people and say, actually, no, that is not accurate, you know, to say of our brothers and sisters on the continent,
Yep.
you know. So I think it's so important, the work that you're doing in respect of that storytelling bit, and to be able to want to connect us all together. Now, two final questions. How did you get into vlogging? Because in China, you started studying engineering, aeronautical engineering. So, and I know, you know, in reading your bio and doing some research on you, you know, that there is a huge African diaspora in China as well. And of course, you know, and when I was in Taiwan, there was a brother from Ghana as well, through the Pan-Africana group that I was a part of, who was also doing that work, except he was doing that work culturally. With drums and dancing and music, and that's where I learned about high life music, by the way. You know? You know. So but how did that start? And it went from you doing that work there, but it now blossomed into something totally huge.
So basically, I was in school studying engineering, and I was like, you know what, it's about time for me to convert my passion into a profession. I love talking, and I'm like, why am I talking and no one is paying me for talking? You know, if you love eating, why are you eating and no one is paying you for eating? So I started doing research on how to convert the talking into money. So that led me to YouTube platform. I started making videos living in China as a black man. And my dad was not really happy about the kind of videos that I was making. So my dad called me home and said, hey, it's about time to do something that actually create impact in people's life. And I'm like, wow, if that is the case, what do you think I can talk about? And my dad is like, you speak Chinese. Why don't you use the Chinese that you speak to clear the misconception about Africans living in China? And that is why I started like making videos, changing the narrative about Africans living in China. But later on, I saw a lot of people coming to China because of my videos. And whenever they come, they were like, oh, I was scared of going to China. But when I saw your video, I decided to come in here. And I'm like, wow, if you came to China because of me, this is not my country. I guess I can use the same medium to change the narrative about Africa in Africa. So 2018, quit my job and left China to Africa. Everybody thought I was crazy. My friends were like, you're crazy to leave China and go back to Africa to just make videos. And I'm like, you know what? I just want to make an impact and leave a legacy. If no one is creating positive videos about Africa, I will be the guy who will just go out there and do just that. So I went, started creating videos, and guess what? Africans were shocked to see that Africa is beautiful. They couldn't even believe it.
Yeah.
So they couldn't believe it. So
because what you have done, I think so. One of my professors, Dr. Lengmia, Kebuma Lengmia, who is from Ghana as well, he would say, we have to decolonize. We have to decolonize how we think about ourselves and how Western media has portrayed us. Because it was always about Africans living in huts, and it's always about this starving kid. It's always this starving kid who always looks the same with the 3 flies on their faces. That's all Western media showed you of Africa, and instability and all of that, without even acknowledging the role that they played in the instability. So in terms of doing that representation, I think that's important as well.
Yeah, I think it's about time for Africans to start telling their own stories in a very positive way. I mean, no country that I've been is perfect, but can we start projecting our various countries in a positive light? Because when you do that, it attracts investment, it attracts tourism, and it increases the GDP of the country. So I believe that it's about time for all of us to get involved, be ambassadors of our various countries, and help develop our countries, because no one will ever tell your stories better than yourself. So that is the narrative that I'm on, telling people that it's about time for us to tell our own stories. And I think I've done extremely well with that. And I see it has actually inspired a lot of creators to also get involved in terms of projecting their various countries in a positive light. Yeah.
And so what are the next steps? What do you hope to get out of all, this really important work that you're doing on these platforms that we have, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all of these various platforms? Will there be a book, a movie? What do you hope to do?
So
in terms of building on that legacy?
Definitely, it's going to be a whole media house that will be projecting Africa in a positive light, and also Africans seeing themselves in a positive light on that platform. So it's more like celebrating Africans across the globe. But the first goal is to make sure I travel to every Black nation in the world to bring a positive story from each and every single country. And listen, there are a lot of countries to go, and I just can't wait.
We were brought everywhere and anywhere in the world as a result of that horrible slavery era. Yeah.
Oh,
Anything else you wish to add, brother? It's so good having you in Grenada.
I just want to say that I yesterday I felt like a diplomat. I felt like a whole celebrity at the National Stadium. I couldn't believe that people in here watch my videos. So I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you, and I can't wait to start making videos from Grenada, even though I've not started yet. But tomorrow is my first day of going out there and immersing myself in the in your country and culture. So when you see me tomorrow anywhere or a day after tomorrow, please say hi. Thank you.
Absolutely, my brother. It's so good having you again on the Bubb Report, and we look forward to seeing all of the exciting videos you plan to share about Grenada. So thank you again.
Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate you, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, my brother. Viewers and listeners, this is the Bubb Report. We thank you for tuning in to the last segment of the program. What we will do now is take a break and come back for the second segment of the program, where Dr. Patrick Entwine will be joining us to discuss the fallout and the economic impact of the funding freeze of USAID programs worldwide, that of course is also having ripple effects across the Caribbean. We'll be right back after these messages, and please remember to like and share this week's live stream. Stand by. Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching. And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Of course, we're happy that those of you who tuned into the Wodemaya interview Really enjoyed that segment, and of course, I will take some of those comments. Donna is saying, thank you, Dr. Bubb. Naima is saying, Wodimaya is so cool. He sure is. Kenrick Harper, good morning, sir. Wodimaya, you're doing an amazing job at connecting the diaspora to the mainland. Yes, because we are all African. And yes, we know that some people may not want to admit that, but we are. We really are Africans in the diaspora. Benedict Rouge is saying, let me get his comment. He's saying Grenada and Ghana agreed on an MOU to expel visa travelers between the two, but the new president installed in December. Mr. Rouge, I'm sorry, I'm finding it hard to follow what you're trying to say. I think you're mentioning the visa restrictions that probably existed between Ghana and Grenada. It looks like it probably has been lifted. Let's get some other comments. Naima again is saying, yes, the media only show us the poor parts of Africa and Haiti. Now, every celebrity wants a piece of the African land. Not only celebrities, but of course, the global north, the countries of the global north, and China as well. And as he said, you know, Africa is for Africans. And of course, Akeem Lewis is saying, Dr. Bubb, great program this morning. Thank you. Well, folks, we are going to now segue into the second segment of the program, where we'll be joined by Dr. Patrick Antoine to talk about the USAID Feeze. Now, for many decades since its founding in 1961, USAID's impact in the Caribbean region primarily focused on building resilience to climate change, addressing environmental threats like marine degradation, reducing youth crime and violence, improving health outcomes, and supporting economic development by strengthening local communities and institutions, particularly in areas like disaster preparedness and sustainable tourism practices, all while working to mitigate the impacts of natural disasters like hurricanes through infrastructure development and community engagement. Of course, history would record that USAID, in the context of the devastation wrought by Hurricane Ivan in Grenada, provided significant assistance towards Grenada's recovery from both Hurricanes Ivan and Emily. Now, since the incoming far-right Trump administration announced plans to freeze USAID funding, the International Organization for Migration told Brazil, for example, that it was suspending work on a program that helps connect Venezuelan migrants in the country with employment opportunities. The Colombian group, Institute for Studies for Development and Peace, which monitors violence against rural communities, said that it would terminate the contracts of several team members. News of the aid freeze sounded alarms with the region's humanitarian and nonprofit sectors, and some Latin American and Caribbean policymakers argued that the stoppage ran counter to the administration's stated goals, such as reducing undocumented immigration to the United States. Now, the types of programs currently paused include anti-gang units that assist governments in the region in investing in and the trafficking of leaders of crime. For example, the MS-13 group, who are directing criminal activities both in Central America and the United States. But what impact would this funding freeze have on the Eastern Caribbean? And here to make sense of it all is economist Dr. Patrick Antoine, who is currently based in Trinidad, but a Grenadian at heart. Dr. Antoine, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. It's good to have you again, sir.
Great morning to all your listeners, and it's good to be with you again on the program.
Yes.
I'm sorry that I missed Wodimaya.
Yes.
I was doing what I'm called upon to do by forming common cause with my brethren at church. Yes, man.
Dr. Antoine, it's so good to have you again. I hope you're having a happy new year. And perhaps, were you in Grenada for independence, or did you participate in independence activities elsewhere?
No, elsewhere. I would have liked to have been, but we are in the midst of all sorts of preparations for meetings. But I did celebrate in my own way, and I did, in fact, form common cause with my brothers and sisters in Grenada by keeping in contact.
Excellent, excellent. Now, Dr. Twine, let us go on to this USAID conversation, very important conversation. Now, let us first talk about the impact of ongoing USAID projects in the Caribbean region, not only in respect of the dollar amount, but in the sectors that benefit from USAID funding.
Yeah. So the impact on the Caribbean at this time is obviously going to be significant, if only because it's not only the fact that the projects, so to speak, that depend on the USAID's funding directly have been impacted, but it's also the fact that many of the projects pull in counterpart funding. Yes? Mm-hmm. So that that's the first thing I want people to understand, so that the impact is larger than just the monetary impact from USAID. It also has to do with many of the other institutions that now are questioning whether they can fund the gap or whether it makes sense continuing with the project. So we're going to have impacts, for instance, as you well know, on some of the infrastructure projects. But I want to talk about the shift that we saw with USAID more recently in funding private sector activity in the region. And in that context, certainly projects that deal with private sector activity in the agri-food sector, which deals with food security, projects that deal with resilience in terms of building resilience to natural disasters, projects that deal with just micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise structuring, projects that deal with financing, providing financing on a scale-up basis. So, for instance, there is a project that we're involved in, and although the USAID is putting in, let us say, a factor of 1, what we're looking at is a sort of end product with a scale factor of 20, what we call a 20 times, right, the injection. So the impact is going to be significant for the region, and in the instance of the projects that we know of, where, for instance, you have projects that are also co-funded with resources from the IDB, with resources from government, with resources from NGOs. Those are going to be impacted quite negatively as a consequence of the pullout. I see. Are you hearing me clearly? Because
yes, I can hear you clearly. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So I think the impact is going to be quite strong, and it's untimely too. For instance, there are 2 projects that we have. One is Reset, and one is another program which is focused on agriculture, which draws on the funding that was given for sort of building food security in Ukraine, a carve out about $46 million. So that's come to a halt, untimely, because we had just sort of mobilized the private sector in the Eastern Caribbean and Guyana, Suriname, and so on, Trinidad and Tobago, and Belize. We just mobilized the private sector themselves to get involved, and things were just at the stage where they were about to take off. The impact on these projects, for instance, in one program, we're talking about 2,100 small businesses that will be impacted directly because those projects have come to a halt. So it's going to be a significant impact, but it's also going to be an impact in terms of crime and security. And of course, you know, the region's engaged in one of the worst sort of crime waves that we've seen. It's not crept up on us. You know, it's been coming for a while, but there are several programs that benefit from joint funding from the United States that deal with dealing with the causal factors of crime and let me just say criminality in our region, so that things such as transnational crime and smuggling, those programs are going to be impacted. Programs dealing with firearms and interdiction, those are going to be impacted. Programs dealing with surveillance and trying to get sort of building the intelligence to address crimes, those are going to be impacted as well. And so I think for us, we're still trying to get a good handle on what the true impact is, but it is in fact going to be significant for the region for the reasons I mentioned.
Very well. Now, the historians, especially those of a particular global South epistemology, have argued that USAID's work in the global South, in the Caribbean, in Africa especially, is a sort of an extension of U.S. imperialism, and that there are also those who would say, well, we have not really grown from aid, we have not really benefited from aid. That what foreign aid has done historically is that it kept us in this developmental abyss without allowing us to have the resilience and the independence and the wherewithal to get out of that abyss and carve our own resilient, and I hate to use this word resilient, I think it's become overused in many respects, but that has been the argument. Now, is that a view that you also subscribe to? I suspect you don't, given the plethora of projects and programs that you've just articulated here that benefits from, in spite of American imperialism. I suspect that the USAID would be one of those things where the US, in many respects, projects that type of soft power.
There's no question that when countries give donor resources, and I'm cautious with the word just aid, donor resources, that they also have other objectives, strategic objectives that they intend to be fulfilled by the grant of those programs, that donor assistance. I think we'd be naive not to understand that. So that is the case with the United States. It's the case with China. It's the case with all other countries that give us the donor assistance. Even our brothers in Cuba, and there is this reciprocity too, that we also benefit from this because we live in a hemisphere that is rather integrated. So that's the first thing. So as we've come from the old sort of ideology which talks about imperialism and so on, I think the world has changed. And I think a lot of this now depends on us. So for instance, increasingly, developing countries, the global South, has an opportunity to help shape the way that programs are developed and the way programs are also delivered. So for instance, take the programs in the Caribbean as one case in point. We had a significant program which was actually being led by Sandyford Edwards. People know him as Rural Edwards. Sandyford Edwards from Grenada. And what he's done coming from CARICOM institutions is that he was able to significantly sort of orient and design the way in which these donor funds would be programmed. And I think that's healthy. So I think there's been a shift. It is not a complete shift, and we're not naive. I think all the countries expect something in return. But increasingly, too, a lot of the intellectuals and the capacity and the persons that are being hired to deliver these programs do have a philosophy that is quite different, and it allows us a freer hand in helping to shape, not totally, but increasingly, the programs and the outcomes that we are going to be, in fact, that we desire. And many of these are in keeping with our national development programs and with, of course, the trust by the community. So no, I've given you a long-winded answer to the question, which you're absolutely correct. I don't entirely agree with at all. I don't think it's as simplistic as that.
No, yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you there. Now, in respect of, and of course, we have a question from Nicole James Phillip here, who's saying, I wonder what was some of the tangible benefits from those projects mentioned. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I'm happy that you begun very transparently and in a balanced way by mentioning the assistance we got during Ivan.
Yes.
Because I had the benefit myself of playing a very let me say integrated, I want to use the word integrated with the team, role with the recovery from Ivan and the United States Agency for International Development through their various programs, and also the other agencies of the US government did in fact play a strong role in the recovery from Ivan, including the way in which we structured funds, which allowed us through, I think it would have been our coordinated agency for recovery, ARD, to direct a lot of support to the private sector in all facets of the economy. That's a good example. In the program that we're involved in now, what we're doing is essentially dealing with small and micro enterprises, youth, women, and we're dealing with indigenous groups as well. So we have, for instance, the Cardinagros. We have other groups that we're dealing with that are ordinarily not able to access capital easily. And we were just at the stage where we had sent out, as it were, a call for proposals. And the call for proposals were being responded to by a number of groups that had organized themselves through cooperatives, and many of them are also entities which have no more than sort of $100,000, $200,000 in capital, but they're trying to get access to up to $500,000 in capital. And they are using these resources to finance their own projects that they've developed, which has tremendous impact on each of the economies. So again, that is something that I think is quite useful. And of course, the support in crime and security is substantial. The information on transnational crime is something that I think is of benefit to all the countries, and CARICOM continues to need that kind of support if we are to deal with the wave of crime, including the shipment of guns coming from the south. We don't often speak about this, but also coming from the north.
Yeah, and you know, the president of Mexico made a very valid point. Now, the bellicose rhetoric from the White House occupant seemed to scaremonger people from the global south. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they are, in quote unquote, infesting American society in respect of things like fentanyl, illegal immigrant, undocumented immigrant crime and things like that. And the president of Mexico made the point that if there was not a demand and supply dynamic from the United States, then perhaps these issues would not exist. In fact, the guns are manufactured not in Mexico, they're manufactured in the United States, right? And so I think it's important to also make the point that in the United States, we have a vast Caribbean diaspora of tax-paying American citizens who contribute to the public purse of America. So when Grenadians and Caribbean people say, well, you know, they should not care about the Caribbean, well, a lot of those funding, a lot of USAID funding comes from proceeds from our tax-paying dollars here in the United States as people in the diaspora. So I just thought I needed to make that point there as well.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think in an integrated trading world in which we now live, the United States is our largest trading partner. So the US accounts for about 52% of all our trade in goods, and they're a significant investor in the private sector activities in CARICOM. They're one of our largest sort of originating markets for tourism. These are all significant indicators of the highly integrated nature of our region with the United States. And of course, you know that remittances play a large role in a lot of these economies, such as St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Belize, Jamaica, and also Grenada. We have a listing of those countries where remittances play a significant role in terms of the order of importance. So there is no question that the interest of the Caribbean countries that essentially form the third border ought to be taken into account by the administration. But here's the thing. Two things. One, the US people voted for the administration that's in the White House. We have a policy, I think, as certainly Caribbean countries and the people who live in the Caribbean, of non-intervention in the domestic affairs of other states. So there is essentially two sides, and I'm agreeing with you on the two-sided argument to this. One is that, yes, we have some reasonable expectation. The word is reasonable expectation that countries will act in a particular way, given the sort of, the integrated way in which I think our societies are, trade, economics, etc., etc. But the other part of this is really the administration of any one of the countries in the hemisphere have a right, when they're voted into office, to administer their own policies in keeping with what they think their own domestic
priority objectives, the domestic objective. Yes,
absolutely. So I think, again, you are right. There's a lot of rhetoric going around, but I think we have to be very realistic about this. And I make the point that it's a pause, and I'm certainly, from the tone of my voice and from the arguments, you would hear that we've been affected in a major way, the organization that I have the honor of leading. We're hopeful that as this thing sort of settles, that the programs that do have a positive impact, certainly on the mutual relations of the countries, that contribute to growth, that contribute to equity, that contribute to trade, that contribute to integration, that contribute to social justice, that those programs essentially are allowed to continue. As you know, there is no secret, there is a strong concern by the administration about what they've called the DEI programs. We in the Caribbean have a different approach to that, and we don't apologize for it, because in our constitutions and in many of the societies, we've moved past that. And I think we need to be frank in speaking truth to power, right? We've moved past. And I think in that regard, it is now for us, Kellan, to step in and to demonstrate by our own actions, including our funding actions, that there are a number of these programs that are properly and fully part of our own milieu in terms of the way that we intend to develop our societies. We cannot go back, and I say so openly as a Christian, we cannot go back to some of those days where we start excluding people or excluding programs based on the, whether they're indigenous, right? Based on, other such indicators that persons have, including sexual orientation. And again, I know I'm on your program and I've just come from church, but I speak openly that I think we have to ourselves in our Caribbean societies double down on some of this. We can't go back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, and I would say something, I don't usually, speak to my personal issues on the Bubb Report, but, as someone who works in the academic space in the United States, as a professor, at a predominantly, I wouldn't say it's predominantly white, but there is, a significant white presence at the institution. And of course, now you hear these murmurs, is he a DI hire? He's an immigrant, he has an accent, and all of these things now are being used as weapons, really. When in fact, at the HBCU I attended, Howard University, we had to work twice as hard, right? And there was this idea that Black people we just get these things just because people have to fill quotas. Absolutely not. And I take strong exception to the way that this is being bandied about now. So I'm really glad you made that point. But Dr. Twine, two final questions, and then we'll get to some viewer comments. Are you surprised that the way in which foreign aid has been used sort of as a weapon of projecting American power under the current administration, or has that always been the case? Is it the case that sort of the disguise and the mask is off with the current White House occupant, because he just says what he feels, and of course, in many respects, he just, is very politically incorrect about who America really is?
Yeah, I think the truth is somewhere in the center. There's no question that there's more openness with the United States' foreign policy intentions for the hemisphere and, of course, for the world. I also think that the administration in settling its affairs, that they have perhaps pushed that agenda a little more aggressively than other administrations. And I think because the pause has been so sudden, I think we're tending to see perhaps the underbelly of how some of the administrations have functioned. Perhaps, another administration may have done it differently. But the truth is that I don't think that we can pretend to be shocked, Kellogg. Even before the US elections, many of us in the region were already contemplating what a Republican administration, where they've told us what they would do, would look like. So, for instance, we're talking about USAID today. My colleagues will tell you that because we have a joint program, which we think is very beneficial to the United States and to CARICOM, that benefits from USAID funding, we were all contemplating what would happen to USAID funding if the Trump administration came into office and did exactly what they told us they would do. Now, they may have done it more suddenly, but I don't think any of us can be shocked by the fact that they are delivering exactly what they promised to deliver.
Yes, say what you want about the White House occupant. He certainly says what he means. and sometimes it's always difficult to read what he says as well. And of course, finally, now let us talk about contingencies. We have some viewer comments here saying, that certainly we have to look elsewhere. What are some of the contingencies? And of course, you indicated in your recent answer here that that is something that you've given thought to. Partners like yourself in the region have given thought to. What are some of the contingencies you can advise the nonprofit agencies, the people who work in the USAID sector? Where can they go? Of course, right now we have the BRICS, and that is a conversation I would be bringing you back to talk about, because that's a conversation we'll be having. Of course, there is a pivot to the global south, which I really refreshingly love. So what happens now in context of alternatives? Where do we go for alternatives?
Well, look, I think the truth is that there's no easy answer to finding alternatives for these things. When you essentially pull the extent of funding that's been pulled, though temporarily, I keep going back to that point and being very clear that I think the way in which we engage this has to take into account that we are yet unsure about its permanence. And of course, we want to be able to engage to ensure that they understand that there are mutual benefits to a number of these programs and they ought to continue temporary. In the meantime, I think we're going to have to essentially use some of the capital that we have that's underperforming in our regions. And happily, certainly in the programs that we're involved in, there is a strong private sector orientation. For some of those programs, I think we're going to have to see how we can use, let me just say, capital within the countries and the region that does not benefit from perhaps high rates of interest. We're going to have to find bridges to make that happen. But many would say, listening to this, well, that's more medium to long term. In the short term, I think we're going to have to try to present these proposals to other countries in the global south. Happily, in the case of the CPSO and many of the other countries, including Grenada, we have reached out even before this development to our brothers and sisters in the continent. I had the opportunity of working with the Afri-Exim Bank in introducing them to the countries in the region. And we're going to have to be reaching out to institutions like that to see how we can develop programs that are win-win to fill some of the gaps that we see. But we also have to start leaning on some of the other relationships we have. And we've started doing that. The government of India, for instance, and institutions in the global south that do have, in fact, a common purpose, a common cause, a common vision with the institutions in our countries. I wish I could point you to sources of funding and say, look, you can go here or there. But even with the reduction in funding to the WHO, right, where we've seen Bloomberg step in, programs are going to be affected. So that the danger, I think, for us now is, first of all, to overreact in the short run, because we want to try to work with our partners to ensure that there is an understanding of what some of these programs are. But I think in the short run, there are no easy answers except the ones that I've mentioned, using some of the capital from our domestic institutions.
And Dr. Antoine, let us talk about the other geopolitical player in our region that's carving a significant footprint, and that is the People's Republic of China. Of course, one might argue, and I've been reading some research in that geopolitical context that speaks to how China plans to fill that gap, and they're probably salivating at the thought that now their influence will be so much greater in America's backyard, in the Caribbean and Latin America. And already they have been doing a lot of work around the Belt and Road Initiative. So in this period of sort of a schizophrenic American isolationist policy, while also carrying a big stick in some ways, will that redound to the benefit of the People's Republic of China?
I think wherever there's a gap, all of these powers that have an interest themselves in global influence and global dominance will in fact step in to fill that gap. And so it is not surprising that many of us believe that this creates an opportunity for the People's Republic of China to step in and fill the gap. And what makes that even more possible, if you followed my argument, is the fact that many of the projects that we've been talking about, particularly with the shift to resilience, right? Not just climate, but economic resilience. A lot of the private sector activities and actions, those are investment oriented and infrastructure oriented. So I think increasingly that shift's going to favor relationships with capital from China that really is looking for markets at low interest rates. And I think that's certainly something that I think the U.S. government must take into account in its sort of arithmetic of what this all means for their relationship in the hemisphere, us being at their third border. But I'm sure that in the cut and thrust of things, it will certainly occur to them that with a Guyana in the south and with a rising Suriname with oil and gas, that CARICOM is not a region that you want to essentially set free. The economic interest is deeply entrenched in the region. And I'm showing the cut and thrust of things, in addition to the matter that it creates room for China to fill. I think the United States themselves, I mean, these chaps are not silly. I think when the dust settles and the euphoria goes away, they would recognize that these are clear and present dangers that they must put into their sort of, let me say, into their calculus on where this will land.
I think I was muted there. Now to piggyback on what you just articulated here, in respect of the CARICOM as a governmental institutional entity, Caribbean leaders, what should Caribbean leaders doing now to position itself to treat with any of the volleys that might be coming from Washington? I remember in the last administration of the current White House occupant, he summoned Caribbean leaders to Mar-a-Lago, and and he had them waiting to see him. I don't think all the Caribbean leaders went. Actually, some Caribbean leaders said that they would not be subjected to that type of indignity. I don't know if you remember that. And a bunch of Caribbean leaders went up to Mar-a-Lago and sort of kissed the ring, if you will, of this man. And so the question now we have to ask ourselves is, what will be, or what should be, the Caribbean region's approach in respect of tactically treating with whatever foreign policy volleys that he may come with, whatever threats he may come with, whether those are sanctions, tariffs, or whatever schizophrenic threats he might come with. depending on his mood on any given day.
So I think the CARICOM governments at this time must first of all go into deep reflection on how our strategic interests are impacted by the changes announced so far and the changes that we anticipate. This is not a small step. What I'm suggesting is that there really has to be, let me say, I'm not saying reflection, I'm saying analysis. The word is analysis, right? Economic, social, political, geopolitical. There has to be serious analysis, crime and security, of what this all means for our region. And I think that's certainly something that they ought to take the opportunity to do at the upcoming heads of government meeting between the 19th and the 21st. Having done that, the second most important thing for us to do as mature democracies, and I do mean mature democracies because I think compared to what we're seeing in the rest of the world, I think we are indeed blessed and we've come far farther than we often think. As mature democracies, we have to engage. We have to engage. In short, we should be seeking an engagement with the United States once we are clear on what our strategic interests are, on how we're going to be impacted, and how we intend to advance our economic, social development or resilience in all respects. And let me say that I've always said that whether the United States administration recognizes it or not, right, this issue of climate resilience, and I've heard the rhetoric, but climate resilience joins us. Yes, when a hurricane passes Jamaica, passes Cuba, the next thing you know, you're looking at Florida, you're looking at the Panhandle, right? You're looking at the coastal states. So I think, again, it is for us to engage on those issues that I think we have this common interest on. I could say no more of that at this time, but we should set this agenda up and then seek a serious engagement on all of the pillars that I've mentioned. We should do that, by the way, before the 90-day pause, quote unquote, is up. We should seek to do that at the soonest opportunity, and we should seek to do that as a community, not country by country.
Very well. Tailor-made, good morning there. I saying good morning, everyone. I would like to hear Dr. Antoine's proposal to building the resilience of SIDS, that small island developing states, in the context of this conversation.
Yeah, well, I think in the context of this conversation, we have to recognize a couple of things. We have a SIDS declaration that was signed in Antigua. And I think that has the elements of a program that we ought to be working on as small island developing states among ourselves and also with our countries, partners, and groupings around us. So for me, this means that as SIDS, we have to try to deliver this agenda on social and economic resilience and climate resilience. So I think what we have to do is we have to be even more clinical. We have to take out our pencils, clinical about the climate resilience projects, programs, approaches, for which commitments have been made globally, but where the financing still continues to lag. But I think involved in that is us recognizing that we cannot any longer solely depend on the financing or the actions of others. So I think the SIDS declaration in Antigua now calls for us to eke out, to put our best minds to work, whatever financing we can to drive that development internally, recognizing, of course, that there's a broader responsibility, which we also need to lean on. But I think increasingly we're going to have to be able to bring more counterpart resources to that conversation. So that's economic resilience, climate resilience, social resilience. All of those pillars will now rely a lot more on what we can do amongst ourselves, and which is why the conversation on BRICS and the consolidation of countries in CARICOM and the consolidation of countries in Latin America and the Caribbean starts to play a greater role. I see.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Margaret Francis and USAID contributed funds to quite a number of programs in the region over the years, and not just recently. It funded programs for crime reduction, police training, AIDS prevention. I cited Ivan because that was something that is most recent and that many listeners here are aware of. Ernesto Jose is saying that's the reason we have to open up our markets to the African continent and other countries as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the Emirates countries, as well as Europe. And of course, we know that the European Union does a significant share of work in that space as well. Margaret says, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to look at our own strengths and start building our own. Let's go on to some other comments here. Margaret again saying, ever heard of the saying, beware of the Greeks bearing gifts? Dr. Twine, have you heard of that saying? It's the first time I'm hearing that saying.
I also smilingly say, and also Grenadians bearing gifts. Yes.
Also Grenadians bearing
also Grenadians. No, but I think she's absolutely right. Look, let me tell you, CARICOM's promised to deliver an integrated capital and finance market for so many years since, let me say, it was sort of re-emphasized at the Grenada's declaration in 1989. We haven't done that. A lot of our people are investing capital in dangerous places and dangerous ventures because they just don't have options. The option of getting 1% at commercial bank is just not very attractive for many people. The rate of inflation outstrips that. We haven't done that. Many of the climate projects and projects that have climate elements, increasingly from the private sector, can give you rates of return that's north of 5 and 6%. But because we don't have the sort of instruments, let me say the products, and also a sort of integrated CARICOM regime, such as a capital and finance market that's integrated across CARICOM, our people have been disadvantaged. So what's been happening is that because we haven't done as policymakers at a community level what we ought to have done, we've essentially made our people, by dint of the fact that we haven't given them options, become poorer and poorer over time. These opportunities, I agree with the person who made the comment, gives us a chance to deliver what we said we would have delivered, in 1989, in 1973, when we had, the original Treaty of Chagaramas, etc., etc. Regional integration has a role, right? But whenever something happens, we run to it, and as soon as the sort of squeeze ends, the crisis passes, we go back to our own national.
We go back to, yes.
Right? And so I'm agreeing with her that the opportunity for us now, which is why I think there is a lot of momentum now at the level of the community to finally put on the table, right, developing an integrated regional stock exchange, which would give small enterprises an opportunity to pitch for funding on the junior stock market, as firms do in Jamaica. But we don't have that opportunity at home, as firms do in other countries. We don't have the opportunity well structured in Trinidad either, but they have a number of financing instruments because of the oil and gas that we don't have in our own space. But we now need to dig deep and do the things that we know, how to do. We've just put them off because it was easier, right, to open ourselves to funding from a number of the donor institutions, which is not bad if you still use it to leverage and to build in what you need to do. But in many instances, we haven't done that. So the caller's comments, I think, is absolutely spot on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And let us get to one final comment, and then we have to quickly move on to the next segment. We have Mr. Hector and Mr. Blash patiently waiting here. I hope I'm not taking them away from their lunch. I do apologize, gentlemen, for that. But Sir Alexander is saying it's rather unfortunate that Caribbean leaders have not been more aggressive in pursuing one Caribbean, one economy, one people, one currency. We are blessed with resources that can be galvanized. I'm sure that that's a sentiment that you stand by, Dr. Twine, as well.
Absolutely. Prime Minister Motley recently said that, look, it was time for us to embrace this issue of integration in a more deliberate fashion. In fact, I would say about 10 years ago, our community made the unfortunate decision that the single economy, not the single market, which is the movement of goods and services, etc., but the single economy building out the capital and finance space, dealing with single company registration, dealing with how we deal with mergers and acquisitions. They made the decision, for instance, that the economy component of the CSME was on pause, just incredibly. We didn't understand it as sort of academics and as professionals and officials in the space. But we're very delighted. We're delighted by the fact that Prime Minister Motley recently indicated that forget this pause thing. We're moving on to build out what we promised to build out, because now more than ever it's needed. Right. So I'm completely in agreement with that comment.
Dr. Antoine, before I go on to getting final comments from you, it will be remiss of me as a journalist to not ask, because I usually do. Is there any interest, sir, in returning home to the new National Party? There is new leadership in the party now. Is that something that's on your cards? Now, there's been some old reporting that you've been meeting with some of the your old friends in the, well, I don't know if I'm sure they're still your friends, but your old colleagues in the NNP. Dr. Antoine, is that something that is on the cards for you, sir?
One of the things that I think I'm known for, is my faithfulness and my loyalty.
Yes.
I am faithful and loyal to the regional private sector. Okay. I have the opportunity of leading them, and because of that sort of loyalty, where I represent the private sector across the community without regard or consideration for political parties domestically.
Okay.
I am completely, as the CEO and technical director, I'm completely dedicated to regional integration and to leading the regional private sector at this time. So that gives you an answer. But I want to also say the other thing. I have continued to enjoy the benefit of communion, and fellowship and friendship and camaraderie relations with comrades across all shades of the political spectrum in Grenada. And some of my best friends are in the NDC. Some of my best friends are in the NNP. Some of my best friends are ex-ministers, as is well known. And boy, let me tell you, with being in the departure lounge, as many of us are increasingly, Kellan, I don't intend to give that up for the world. So the answer is, I have never stopped interacting with all of the players across the spectrum. I love debate. I love the exchange of ideas, and that is really something I hold profoundly to. And let me just say, I find it sad that increasingly we're losing that ability in our country.
Yes,
and
I agree.
It is sad that we're losing that. So
I agree.
Whether it is Emlyn or Peter, whether it is Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, who I've had the joy of sitting on the same side with as we battled on certain issues long ago, which were aimed at giving workers in the union a better stake in terms of arrangements. Whether it is my colleagues Toes, Lennox Andrews, I share common cause with all of them, which is aimed at building Grenada. We may have different views on how we do that from time to time, but I think I enjoy really the flexibility at this time of engaging with all sides. So that's really where it is. And I see
Mr. Thomas Wilbur is saying, Fred here is saying, why would he leave that private money and fight up with the politics? Well, I suppose you can do both these days. You can just put some of your business in a private trust. Is that what they do these days? I'm not directing that at anyone. I'm just making a general observation, point.
Well, Dr. Bob, I have tremendous regard
yes,
for the way in which you are able, just off the cuff, without much thinking, to throw these things out, and I wonder why, sir.
I have the gift of gab, shall we say? So, Dr. Antoine, I will go over to you, sir, for some closing comments, sir.
No, I think one of your commentators is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
that we have an opportunity here to do the things that I think we have committed to, but we have not really taken the time because the the moment didn't force us to, in terms of deepening the work we need to do for ourselves, such as building out how we support our institutions, making sure institutions are fit for purpose, making them more results oriented, taking people out of poverty and having programs that are more oriented towards resilience, building out capital and finance markets, linking domestic markets and domestic money to opportunities regionally, making our poor people better off, making our economy stronger. And I think this gives us yet another, the word is not an opportunity, it's another opportunity to do some of these things. On top of that, the word is on top of that, the icing on the cake is that we also need to see how we engage with the US administration on matters of mutual interest to CARICOM and to the United States. That is going to take thought. Clearly, there are going to be some losses in terms of jobs in the short run. But I think the task for us now is to sit, think, and prepare to engage. And ultimately, I think that our region and our community is likely to be better off for it, because I think what this shows is that we now need to, not just in Grenada, but in the global south and in CARICOM, right, start working more amongst ourselves so that we can, in fact, make it less and less necessary to depend on international donor assistance. And that's really my last comment, but I really hold strongly to that. Yeah.
Dr. Antoine, thank you so much for appearing on this week's edition of the Bubb Report. And of course, as these issues unfold, we will certainly, and in the context of BRICS, that is a conversation that I've been following and I'm very, very intrigued by. So I would also love to get your take on that for a future appearance on the Bubb Report. So thank you again, sir.
Thank you. Cheers.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, this is the Bubb Report. We will take our final break for the day and come back for the final segment of the program, where we will be having a conversation about the state of road infrastructure in Grenada. Is it a case of now potholes have turned into lakes? Is it a case of road in the hole? What is happening in the context of road infrastructure in Grenada? And what about what is the government doing in respect of building capacity to treat with this very pressing developmental issue that has, quite frankly, many citizens, especially in the northwestern flank of the Northwest St. George constituency, as well as Woodford St. John, concerned about the road infrastructure capacity that is being built in their community. So we take a quick break and come back for the final segment of the program with our two guests. So please stand by for that. You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passport. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just keep quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
And yes, folks, we go there every Sunday here on the Bubb Report. Now, the roads in Grenada are its developmental arteries. They carry people, goods, ideas, and dreams through a very well-connected road network, connecting the country's economic and tourism hubs with its agricultural center in rural Grenada. However, their current state leaves much to be desired. And a comprehensive study conducted across 15 Caribbean territories, including Grenada, by the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, has revealed significant deficiencies in the region's road infrastructure. So clearly it is not only a Grenada issue. And of course, that study emphasizes the need for climate investment, climate resilience, infrastructure investments. Now, with Caribbean countries disproportionately vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, these particular road challenges hinder efforts at building resilience against environmental shocks. Now, in Grenada, the current administration says they are making strides at addressing the road situation by developing a more robust public works program with the construction, for example, of an asphalt plant in the Bouchejou area and enhancing the capacity of subcontractors to roll out a more robust road maintenance program. However, some issues and concerns still remain, as concerned residents in the St. George Northwest constituency, as well as in Woodford St. John, have expressed concern about increasing activities around enhancing Grenada's road maintenance capacity. Now, here to make sense of the road infrastructure challenges in Grenada are Mr. Kevin Blash, who is the current Chief Technical Officer in the Ministry of Infrastructure, as well as Mr. William Hector, a longtime resident of the Woodford St. John area, but who also straddles the Perseverance area, and he will be here to speak to those issues. Unfortunately, our third panelist, that's Mr. Brand Samuel, who is a development consultant who should have been on the panel today. He is not well, and we do wish him the very best. And so he was unable to join our panel for this segment. So Mr. Blash and Mr. Hector, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. It's good to have the both of you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, and Mr. Blash, this is your first time appearing on the Bubb Report, although you've helped us with a previous guest in the past. So it's good to have you here, sir. And Mr. Hector, this is also your first. It's also your first time on the program. So, gentlemen, welcome. But Mr. CTO, I want to begin with you, sir. Let us currently grade the current road infrastructure in Grenada. And I want to caveat this by making the point that in the last year, at least in November especially, Grenada experienced record rainfall. And so we cannot talk about road maintenance without talking about those external climatic factors that affect that. So let us begin there. I want to make that caveat, very important caveat.
Right. So on my end, I'm not sure if I should go about, grading the road infrastructure, because that is a bit of an admission of guilt, so to speak, right? But in a sense, the road infrastructure in Grenada is, there are different elements to it that we can consider. In your opening statement, you spoke to the interconnectivity, which is something that I think we can boast about as compared to other Caribbean islands. But the elephant in the room in terms of the condition of the roadway does leave a lot to be desired. Even myself as a driver, can admit that, over the years, the condition of our roads has deteriorated and is continuing to deteriorate. And it is something that, almost in every single meeting we have, we discuss, how we can strategize to go about, addressing those issues. And as our discussion kind of progresses, we could speak to different elements of that.
Now, there's several ongoing road projects. We have the Molinaire. I'm not too sure when an official opening will happen. We've heard several, different end by dates. That seems to still be an ongoing issue there. Then, of course, the True Blue Road, we have ongoing work there. The Bathway Road, especially after the major rainfall we had last year, that has been a significant issue. And of course, we know that there will be the widening of the Grandance Valley Road that connects, the Woodlands to Woburn area. There is ongoing work. And of course, the Willis Road. Now, we have a commenter here who is saying, that's Mr. Sheldon Alexander. He's saying, but I'm warning the government, by the time they're ready to fix the Willis Main Road, they will have to get about 15 times the amount of original money. I know a lot about roads. So let us talk here, Mr. Blash, about those ongoing projects. But let us start where we started off last, and that has to do with the Willis Road. Where are we with that?
Right. So the Willis Road has, so that is a bit of a complex issue. It is a road that would have started, quite a few years ago. To be fair, when I started working in the ministry in 2020, that was one of the, the roads that was tendered and awarded. There has been some issues, between the government and the contractor and some of the designs and so on. So currently we are, trying to work through some of those issues to resolve them as soon as possible. I know that one is, especially for the residents in the area, is quite, a stickler, because the Willis Road is very important for traversing the West Coast, especially traveling from St. George's to Gov and to eventually to Sates. It's part of of three major roads that you can take, either Willis, Monkuma, or the Molinier route. So having that kind of redundancy is very important,
So let us talk about, the Grandance, the work that will be done on the Grandance Valley Road there. I understand that road widening needs to happen. Now, when I drive along that Grandance Valley Road, that is riddled with houses, and you have mixed development activities taking place. You have commercial activities. There's a spiritual Baptist church there. I believe there's a Jehovah's Witness church as well, and you have people with private homes there. How will that happen? as someone who works in that technical space, I'm just trying to imagine how that will happen.
Right. So what I should say is that the ministry's thinking in terms of road improvement in general is essentially along our main roads you should have a somewhat harmonious drive without any traffic issues. So in terms of the work on the Grandance Valley Road, so let's say we start at Sugar Miller, that roundabout there, heading back to should I say heading to St. David's. So you typically have a bit of traffic, close to Rams, that new supermarket, Sandino, etc. And part of the thinking there is to put in a larger roundabout and to create a dedicated lane that would take you into Lansapine. So part of the traffic that you experience there is because the current roundabout is too small. You have a lot of people who not necessarily go in, down to Morris Bishop Highway, or who head into True Blue that could pass through along Dusty Highway to get down to that direction. So the work there would involve some widening of the road to create some dedicated lanes, so you don't have to, wait for the person in front of you to make their turn, or so that you would actually be able to create more free movement. Another major aspect of the work there would be to create a new bridge close to, that is just after Bumpy Corner in the region, close to IBH and so on. As we would have recalled in the heavy rains last year in November, and just traditionally that area floods quite badly. So we would try to lift the bridge and the road in that area, and then also to put in a roundabout there, because anybody who drives there now would tell you that they have a lot of issues at that intersection with persons who are now going into Woburn. So there would be some areas where we can do some widening. that would be, but it's somewhat limited, true to the same issue that you spoke about. You kind of have houses built right up on either side of the road. What we would also try to do is to include sidewalks. Currently, the road is devoid of sidewalks, apart from very close to Hubbards, which also poses a challenge to motorists, and also to pedestrians. So it's like a multi-pronged approach. It's not only in terms of only vehicles, but is other road users as well.
And of course, is the Molyneux Road officially open? Or I'm hearing conflicting. I know it was temporarily open owing to some of the significant flooding that we had as a result of the rainfall. Where are we with it? It's officially open. When will this project be finally done and dusted?
Right. So basically, the Molyneux Road, in terms of the landslip area, that work is substantially completed. We have to do some slope protection in the areas that were exposed. I think a few months ago there was a very big row on social media when persons started seeing some cracks appear on the downslope. And
so that was not posted by a road engineer. Let's just be clear.
Oh, right, yeah. I know sometimes people see these things and they get a little nervous, but a lot of times when you see things in the media, it's never really from engineers, right?
But no, it's not. It's from people who have platforms.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I guess any publicity is good publicity. It does kind of spur some talking points and some interest in the project. And it's good that people kind of keep us honest, keep us informed. There are some things that to be fair, I see things on social media, and that kind of helps us know where to focus our efforts. So it's good and bad. I guess it's something that we kind of have to temper. So then, apart from the slope protection in Molyneux, there is a final layer of asphalt that has to be applied onto the road. So basically, the design of the wearing course, which is the asphalt that we normally see, called for 75 millimeters, right? So that is roughly 3 inches of asphalt wearing course. So a layer half of that size was already put down on the road, and that was used as a bit of what you call a regulating course. What that allows you to do is that it allows you to it kind of shows up defects in the base course, that is the layer beneath the wearing course. So at least you know how you can concentrate your efforts moving forward as well. So those are really just the two major things to be done. So that second layer should go on relatively quickly. It shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 days or so.
Absolutely. Now and this is where we're gonna bring in Mr. Hector. Mr. Hector, thank you for staying with us, sir. Now there is the construction of the course. Callistra did an interview with Callistra Farrier did an interview with Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell. That was somehow leaked. It should not have been published, but I got wind of it during that process. And that has to do with the construction of that asphalt facility in Bouchejour. And its possible impacts on road maintenance. Now, the Prime Minister in that interview, he indicated that asphalt facility would be doing, I believe it's coal mix. Correct me if I'm not saying this correctly. Coal mix, yes? Is that the accurate terminology, Mr. Blash?
So there are two types of asphalt. So you could do a coal mix, which basically uses, I don't want to say coal bitumen, but it uses coal bitumen, and then you have hot mix asphalt, which is as the name suggests, it's hot, right?
Right. So what will that facility be doing? Because I understand there was a previous facility in Bouchejour as well, and so you've enhanced the capacity there. What will be the role of that facility? As the Prime Minister said in an interview, it looks like that facility will be used to aid in ongoing road maintenance, especially in terms of the potholes and things like that. So the first part of the question is, can you talk about what that facility will be doing? And then the second part of the question has to do with the concerns raised by the residents in the area, in Bushaju, in Brazan, in Happy Hill and surrounding areas, that the effluent, and of course there is a housing scheme, a housing project as well, the effluent that will be coming from that facility, and people are concerned that that would have some environmental impact on them in terms of the fumes that they will be inhaling. Is that something that the Ministry of Infrastructure considered? So I want you to answer the second part of the question first, and then we'll deal with what it intends to do, the function of the facility.
Oh yeah, definitely. It is something that we we are concerned about. The reality of the situation is that plant that is set up in Bushaju is what you call it is referred to as a mobile asphalt plant. So it is meant to be moved. It is really just a temporary measure to give us a bit of respite in the wake of the damages we've seen post the heavy rains in November. So it is not a long-term move by us. It is actually something that and that kind of segues us into the development in Woodford as well, because the intention there is to set up a more permanent, should I say, asphalt plant. That in itself is a private development by the Construction and Industrial Equipment Limited company.
Would that be, and this is where I want Mr. Hector to come in. So what you're saying is that the facility in Bushaju is temporary until that facility in Woodford becomes the permanent place for that. Now, what about go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry, right, yeah. So so the main role of that plant is to at least give us some additional capacity to do some paving. But the long-term plan is not for that plant to remain in Bushaju. In terms of the exact time frame for it to be there, I can't give you an exact time frame.
Well, Mr. Blanche, the resident, some might say, well, if it's a mobile facility, why put it there? Why is it there in the middle? It's close to a preschool. It's close to the playing field. It's close to many residences. The Chinese-funded housing project is there. What about the one in Perseverance? Could it not have been placed there?
So the one in Perseverance is also a private facility as well. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the government owns the land in Bushaju. We currently produce coal mix asphalt there as well. So if I'm not mistaken, there are probably some fumes that are emitted from that site already.
All right, let me bring in Mr. Hector. Mr. Hector, again, thank you so much, sir, for staying with us. Now, you've been hearing the conversation here with the Chief Technical Officer, and of course, there are some things he may and may not be able to say. He's not the minister. The minister is, in fact, the Prime Minister. So I know that there are some things he would not be able to say. But Mr. Hector, as someone who lives in the Woodford community, I know that farmers in that area, residents in that area, yes, there are people who live that straddle Woodford and the Perseverance area. Can you talk about the concerns that you have with what is being constructed in Woodford? And of course, we cannot think of Woodford without thinking of it as a very rich agricultural area. As a young reporter, I would go up there with the late Mr. I believe his name was Mr. Dunstan Campbell. And they had, they did that area is very arable land, and there is also a feeder road area there as well. So talk to us, Mr. Hector, of some of the concerns that you have in respect of what's happening there.
Thank you, Dr. Bubb.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it is very careless of our administration to even consider the things that's being done in our community. Now, I'm quite baffled as to what the gentleman is saying here. Bushaju is a developed area. You said it. There's school and everything. Move up to Woodford. How can one even think about erecting a plant for asphalt or any other type of plant in the area where this plant is being erected? There are houses located just about, say, 30 or 40 feet away from the plant. And it's not only one house, lots of houses. And over those houses there, we have a community called Brooklyn. And this community is a striving community. Over here, we have schools, churches, and other businesses. And putting a plant there would be a real inconvenience to the people in this community. Barring that, now I will question what is the thinking of this administration when it comes to people's welfare. Already we're suffering from the landfill in Perseverance. The people of this community has to deal with flies in the dry season, and even in the rain season, smoke and the noise. It is unfair to us for anyone to even think about putting more weight on these places. And as a matter of fact, the area where these people are being occupying, right? They're occupying the whole area. They're occupying Halifax Harbor, Perseverance Bay, and the landfill has already polluted those bays. So the people in this area here doesn't have any way to recreate themselves. We does not have playing fields. We does not have centers. And the only place you have is this beach, are these beaches. And when you think about putting a plant there where it's being located, it's going to hamper our agriculture system. Now, I, by looking, would say, see that bad things start happening already. The road, the feeder road that's leading up to the Mondo area, where most of the farmers in this community do their farming, the feeder road has fallen, all because of the construction that those people put in there. And nobody is addressing us. The gentleman there, who should have known so much, would have known that when you're going to do these kind of construction in a community, the community at least should be notified. Nobody came to our community and had any meeting with us. We haven't had a heads up. All we see is the plan going up and everybody guessing. Some people tell us it's a hotel, some people, Nicogram say it's a hotel, some say it's guest houses and all they like. And now the development has started. Mr. Bubb, big things start small. And I think this matter has to be looked into seriously because the people is not going to take it lightly.
Yeah, now, as a follow-up to that question, now I understand that as residents in the area, in my background research for this segment, that you spoke with the Member of Parliament for the area. Could you articulate what, and of course the Member of Parliament for the area is the Minister for Climate Resilience, the Honorable Karine James. Could you articulate what conversation you had with the MP in respect of her knowledge of what is happening there? Or even the people who are doing the work, have they reached out to the community? Have they consulted with you in respect of what's happening, not only there, but in respect of what's happening at Halifax Bay as well, of what they're doing there?
Yeah, Mr. Bubb, I am here as a private citizen. Because I live here, I grew up in this community. I think it's only fitting and proper that I speak for the people here. I spoke with the minister on Thursday, and I think it's a shame. I brought to the attention because she visited the area where the road broke, and I was one of the persons there. I asked her, I said, what is this going on? What is this construction? What are they doing there? Shamefully, the minister told me she doesn't know. She said, Mr. Hector, I don't know. I said, how could you don't know? How can you don't know when you're the minister? You're the one who's supposed to protect us. You're the one who's supposed to defend us. You came to us and you told us that you're going to help us better than the other persons who were there before. And now things happening. It could be bad. I don't think it's good. And you telling us, the members of the community, that you don't know, you're not even negotiating for us to have a conversation with the persons who building the who actually constructing the project. I feel bad. It's a shame. And community members feel bad too, because nobody having any discussion with us. I want to know how I mean, what's going on here? Where are we living?
Yeah.
I want Mr. Blanche to tell us, where are we living and what would be the situation with those people in this community going forward? If you're going to erect a permanent structure there, and it's going to be a plant, right? What's going to be happening to my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren? What's going to be happening to our cultural product? What's going to be happening to our schools or our beaches? And so this is a community. This is not a remote area.
Now, Mr. Blash, I understand that I believe you mentioned the name of a facility there. I can't remember the name, but there's also, is that the same Reno project that's happening there?
Right. So,
yeah.
So, Mr. Gajada is the person who owns
Wilson
the
Hector.
land.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Reno is the person who owns the property in Woodford where the construction is ongoing. The reality of the situation is, of course, further to Mr. Hector's point, there would have to be some kind of consultation with the persons in the area to see just the extent of how much they would be affected. I understand his concerns because if he says they have to grapple with the effects of the Perseverance landfill already, and if I'm not mistaken, there's already an asphalt plant in the area, right, Mr. Hector?
Yes.
Right. How would you describe your experience with that asphalt plant in the area?
Listen, living in this community here and having to deal with the area from, say, Cotton Bailey down to Bouchejo is like we're living in filth, right? Now,
okay.
Because you asked me a question, I would like to ask you something. Now, what should the people in these communities do after having invested in retirement homes where, say, like I'm particular, I built my house here because it was pristine. The community was pristine. I could have wake up in the morning, go out on my veranda and inhale fresh air, right? But since all these things start coming into the community, it's not the same. And there are many other people that can say that. Listen, during the daytime, we have to keep our houses closed because of the flies. And now, if you people going to put a plant.
Hold on, now you people, don't say it like that.
Yes, because you're in the government. You're the
Well, yes, Mr. Hector. Again, he's the enforcer of policy.
Yes.
He's not a policy maker. I want us to be clear. He's not the Minister of Infrastructure. Let us be clear there. He's only here in that capacity. So but I do understand your frustration, and of course, hopefully, Mr. Blash, that is something you can take back to the policymakers, because you're hearing the concerns here in respect of their lack of knowledge or awareness of what's happening there. We have comments here saying that the people were not consulted on this. We have comments that even the member of parliament said she didn't know what was happening there. So perhaps that is something you can take back to your boss, the Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of Infrastructure. But is there anything else you wanted to add there, Mr. Blash?
Yeah, no, I understand the angst of Mr. Hector, and I think he
yes,
he's a voice of residents in the area. I think now definitely we have to take a deeper look at what is happening in the area, especially in the backdrop of adding anything else there as well. And it's a fair point. Yeah, it
Yeah, and
is a somewhat of a a sticky situation to be in, so to speak. In the sense that
yeah.
you're damned if you do,
But
you're damned if you don't. So
right, and of course, that facility, Mr. Blash, how will that be enhancing the capacity of the government of Grenada to address road maintenance issues? What are we going to be seeing there? What is that? What work will that plant be doing? I mean, the residents, they seem to be clueless. Maybe you have some ideas to what will be happening there.
right. Well, to be fair, I'm not sure if the detailed plans are really fleshed out, so to speak. In terms of having consultations with persons in the area. I'm just kind of aware of some, the future thinking. The reality of the situation is currently on the island there is only one supplier of hot mix asphalt.
Yes.
That is from the plant that is currently in the area. Part of the logic, I mean, as you know how, and that is from a more economics perspective. A monopoly is right. And a monopoly is an interesting position to be in. When you deal with these things. So ideally, competition should suppose some innovation, improve the prices and the costs to taxpayers. The additional volume of hot mix that can be produced can help to ramp up the speed and the quantity of roads that we are able to repair in a particular time frame. So and I understand completely how Mr. Hector feels. It's better for everybody else, but at what cost to the persons in the in the area. And I think that is something that this conversation this morning is somewhat critical to to addressing and assuaging some of the doubts of the the people in the area.
Now, in the context, and I'll get back to you, Mr. Hector, in the context of, and of course, we, the caveat here is that, as you indicated, that's not government land, that's private land. And that's a challenge we have in Grenada, because there's no land use policy, right? And that has been the perennial debate. And because there is no land use policy, someone builds a warehouse that should have been earmarked for environmental protection. You build a hotel that should have been in an area that's also earmarked for environmental protection or even agricultural use. So what role, I'm not too sure what role the Ministry of Infrastructure plays in the context of decision-making on the Physical Planning Unit Board. Does the Ministry of Infrastructure have any say in what the Ministry of Infrastructure does in deciding to give approvals to construction projects like what we're seeing in Woodford?
Yeah, so the Planning and Development Authority is now a statutory body.
Yes.
The ministry is represented, the Ministry of Health and so on. So any development project has to go through a particular series of submitted master plans and completing ESIAs and so on. So all of that is things that I guess in the coming months will be fleshed out and made public to the residents, so at least they can make comments and address some of these things.
Mr. Hector, I'm going to give you an opportunity now to respond to what Mr. Blash just articulated here.
Dr. Bubb.
Yes, sir.
In Grenada, right? If you has to burn and put light garbage, you have to light a fire in your backyard. You have to get permission from the authority. Mr. Blanche, excuse me, sir, you're not making sense. The building, the project that you're projecting in Woodford is not on the ground. It's already constructed. So who did the environmental study? Why wasn't that done prior to the building being constructed? Why wasn't say the authority and the construction people, why hadn't they meet with the community to find out what would be the impact on that community relative to an asphalt plant coming there. Mr. Bob, this is an asphalt plant. This is not say orange juice, canning orange juice, or a hotel where people eating food. Now, this thing here is going to have a major effect on our community, and it's going to have an effect on children yet unborn. So we don't want it here. It's there, and if we allow it to continue, it's going to develop into something that we wouldn't be able to get rid of. And are they saying that the people in this community has to give up their homes and everything and walk away? Look at the damage that's being done there already. The road fall. People like me who own lands in the Mondo area, for months we won't be able to go up. Maybe for years, who knows? Would they ever be able to reconstruct that road for us? We haven't even heard nothing from the people who erecting the plant there. And where the road has fallen is just maybe about 20 feet from where the plant is. And the road fall because because of the construction. Nobody can tell me different. You understand? So I want, and I would like somebody from the authority, because if my minister, the minister for the constituents of St. John's, does not know what's happening, somebody with more authority should call a meeting and tell us what they intend to do. Because the people is not going to take it easy. And the owner of this plant, at least, should do something to give assistance to the farmers up in Mondo because of the road that has fallen. You understand? And this construction should have never started from day one, from Jumpstart. Mr. Blanche.
Absolutely. Yes. And of course, I'm sure that those concerns Mr. Blash will be taking back to his boss, the policymakers. Hey, again, I cannot overemphasize how much, but this is a story that needs ventilation in the way that we are ventilating it on the Bubb Report. But I do want to get to some viewer comments around the overall concerns of infrastructure in Grenada, Mr. Blash. And of course, Margaret is saying, but the consultation can't take place after the fact. That's something. So Wilbur Thomas is asking, so is Reno going to construct the plant and then sell it back to us? Is that the plan, Mr. Blash? Is that what's happening? Is it going to sell it back to the government of Grenada, or are you not aware of those plans? I said, I don't know. Let me put
sorry,
the
what was
comment
that?
again.
Oh.
Are they going to construct the plant and then sell it back to the state?
Sell
Is
what,
that
the
the
plant?
intention? Yes.
Sell the plant or no, we were just it would operate in a similar scenario to how you purchase concrete. You know, you have private persons who supply concrete. But in terms of the work that has already, but in terms of the work that has already taken place there, I am not aware of, so is the plant already functional? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Hector?
I don't think he's saying that the plant is functional. I think he's saying the structure is built. No work, I don't think any work has commenced there. But he's also speaking about that particular feeder road in that area. Is that something that has been brought to the ministry's attention as well?
Right. That is the feeder road in Mondo, right?
Montfilla.
Sorry?
Montfilla.
Okay. What is the official name of it?
Montfilla.
Mount Villa.
Villa. Yeah. And that road is connected to where the construction is, or where they've cleared the land in Woodford?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not from the West Coast, so I'm not very familiar with the area.
Yes.
Right, and
Okay.
you're saying that the construction in the area has damaged that road? So is it that they connected to the?
That's my opinion.
Okay, but question, so the road to where the guys have cleared the land is the public road?
That's the public feeder road that leads you to Mondo, to the farming community. And in Munda, there's about 25 active farmers. People with coconut, make banana sauce up, name it. Short crop and all they like, right? And husbandry, right? And we drive to go there. We use that road. This is a main thoroughfare, right? So with that road, with that road being broken, the farmers there has to park the car and walk about 2 or 3 miles up the hill to get into the lands. It's unfair to us.
Okay, and what was the condition of that road previously?
What was the condition of the road before, Mr. Hector?
It was super. We was using it.
Okay.
And there are houses there. There are houses, there are a row of houses, maybe about 30 or 40 feet as the crow fly from where the plant is erected. I don't know if it's in use. I have not seen anything and so on. But in the first place, it shouldn't have been there. Now, if we have proper what shall I say, people doing their due diligence. We have proper due diligence and people looking at the things the way it's supposed to be done, this would have never happened. Irrespective to the fact that the land may be private, but you can't hide smoke. You can't hide
That is right. And the people of Mount Hartman know this in respect of the quarry that's down there as well, right? Yeah.
There's already a plant in Perseverance. Some arrangements could have been made because the people here, we never demonstrated against the landfill and the plant in Perseverance, never. But Perseverance is about quarter mile from where the plant is now being located in Woodford. So you have one in Perseverance that the people accepted. And because we accept the one in Perseverance, you will take another one and come and put under our windows. That's not fair. It's not. And I would like the authority, tell us who, the Prime Minister, the Minister of whatever, let them come and we can sit down and have a conversation. We should have a conversation as Grenadians. We're not beasts. So anybody could just come in our community and just do anything and we swallow it and they do whatever they has to do and they go about their business. No, that's not how society is supposed to operate. We're supposed to operate more humanly, right? And no excuse. We shouldn't be making any excuse about this one. It's not about funding, it's not about development, it's not about road, it's not about anything. It's about people. This is about people and the people's welfare.
A comment here from Margaret is saying private ownership of land doesn't mean you have carte blanche to do whatever you want on that land. Don't get it twisted. At the end of the day, all land belongs to the state. Well, Margaret, some might say to you, yeah, all land belongs to the state, but when I'm ready to build what I'm going to build, I would bring my cutlass out, let the state come and see what I will do to the state. The state will see what God they're serving. Again, I'm just saying that in jest. And we have a viewer this morning. Of course, he is the Member of Parliament for St. George Northeast, the Honorable Ron Redhead. Mr. Redhead, it's good to see you on the program, sir. It would be good to have you on the Bubb Report this year. We have been inviting you to appear on the program in the past, but you've not graced us with your presence since. But it's good that you're commenting. Mr. Ron Redhead, and this is directed to you, Mr. Wilton Hector, is saying, Brother Wilton, what is your recommendation for an alternative site, especially taking into consideration that this is a long-term problem? What say you, sir?
Put it
in response to the Member of Parliament.
Put it in Lansapin. Put the plant in Lansapin or in Calivini. I think this is going to be better. The whole of Grenada is supposed to bear the brunt of our disasters, not only the people in St. John's or the Northwest St. George's area. Mr. Redhead was there. He came that evening last Thursday when we was visiting. He came for a photo op. He didn't say anything. They just laughed and posed and left. The question here is, when are we going to get our road? And when is this plant going to be removed from that area where it's being placed? If you want to find out, where they should put it in Lansopane. That's my take.
All right, Mr. Hector, you have been very frank, and we do hear, and of course, this is a very important issue, and we just have to make the point that the Bubb Report, historically, since its inception, we have always addressed these environmental issues, whether it's in Mount Hartman, whether it is what was happening in Lasages, whether it's what was happening up at Livera. This is something that we have always done, and of course, road infrastructure issues, I think, would not go away. Of course, Soca Boca penned a song in the 90s, in the late 80s, early 90s, "Hole in the Road," and it still continues today. But Mr. Blash, we are running out of time. So, Mr. Blash, there are two other road infrastructure concerns that we have to address. One has to do with regular road maintenance. Now, in that interview with Calistro Fire, which I did not have the time to queue up, the Prime Minister indicated that there was some concerns around the capacity or the lack of capacity of a public works program, of a public works department to deal with all of these issues. But we talk about, overgrown bushes. We know that before you did have a core of workers who dealt with that seasonally. That has been an issue as well. And of course, the ongoing road maintenance, and I'm not talking now of the regular, right, but ongoing pothole maintenance and things like that. Those are some concerns that citizens have expressed. Would we be seeing any movement in 2025 to enhance the work of the Ministry of Infrastructure in treating with those two particular issues?
Yeah. So, well,
and drainage. Let me add drainage to that as well. I'm sorry, drainage as well. Yes.
Yeah, I'm probably too young to be somebody to speak about when we had an active public works department, but
right.
Over time, for one reason or the next, I think the government has kind of moved away from doing things themselves. I guess part of trying to reduce the number of persons who are, should I say, quote unquote, on the payroll. But part of our thinking for moving forward is to, should I say, revamp that in a smaller sense. So what happens is, for example, like I said, we do not produce our own hot mix, and currently we even rent equipment to make coal mix in our two major production areas, that is in Bushiju and in Pulse. That's at the old Pulse airport. What that actually does is that you actually see that sometimes the money you spend to outsource some of these things is almost 2 or 3 times the price you take to just do it yourself, and that also now creates some issues in terms of the speed and the quality to which we can do things. So the ministry is currently trying to procure some heavy equipment, that would help us in undertaking our duties. We also hoping to make some investments in some other pieces of equipment to augment our current techniques in terms of road rehabilitation. Just to improve the quality and the efficiency of the crews that we have. So it is a multifaceted approach. It is something that I don't want to say it is a work in progress, but it is trying to unravel or undo years of of decline or so.
Well, Mr. Blash, any final comments? Of course, there's so many other comments, but we really have to wrap up the program. And there will be a part 2 to this, where we're hoping to invite both the Minister of Infrastructure and the Minister of Implementation. So, Mr. Blash, please indicate, and I will indicate that to the press secretary. Please indicate to your boss, the Prime Minister. Of course, he has never shied away from the Bubb Report. I can't say the same for Minister Andy Williams. You know, he appeared on one program after I quizzed him on certain things, and he never came back after that. But that aside, certainly we'd want to have both of them to really speak to this, because this will be an ongoing issue in respect of road maintenance, especially also in respect of the climactic challenges we have. So, sir, I will go over to you for some closing comments.
Oh no, definitely. You know, let me say thank you for you know, having me here today. You know, it's good that, you know, Mr. Hector was here as well. You know, for us to have a tough talk on a few things. You know,
Yes.
Probably after the show, I should probably catch up with him to see how we could address some of the issues that they're facing, and you know, in the Woodford area.
So this is what I will do after the show ends. I'll connect both of you so that you guys can keep in touch.
Oh no, of course, yeah. You know, but in closing, you know, I wanted to give the public the assurance that the Ministry of Infrastructure is you know, very well, you know, very, you know, concerned about the condition of the road infrastructure and infrastructure in general in the country, and you know, we are willing to do what is necessary to, you know, to address the issues that we have been facing and, you know, will continue to face.
Mr. Blash, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report, sir. And Mr. Hector, sir, I will go over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Oh, yes. Mr. Blanche, no apology, but I'd like you to know that I may sound a little rough on you, but it's not about you. You realize that, right? And I understand. This is our Grenada. Grenada does not belong to one set of people. Grenada belongs to us, right? And what is viewing it as somebody from outside in, if we have a private company come into the community and build a plant, it does not make a difference. The government will still have to buy the product from them, right? So it's like we're going backward. We're going, you know, we're spinning top in mud. Okay. Dr. Bubb, I thank you.
Yes, sir.
For giving me the privilege to appear on this program. I'm looking forward to having conversation with other persons, not even on your program, but in a forum related to those things that's happening in our community. And those persons who are going to appear and speak with us, they should come with facts. They shouldn't come and tell us they don't know. And when people don't know and they have the job, my suggestion to them is give it up. Give up the job if you don't know the job. Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen, thank you. And again, we will, as a programming note, I wish to make the point that we will be doing a follow-up, because this story has so many levels. We have not even spoken in great detail about, again, Mr. Blash, again, in his capacity, was able to give us some answers, but we also have to make the point that Mr. Blash is not a policymaker. And so we will be having the policymakers on the program, but there is a bush issue. In the context of the Reno project, we'll be hoping to get much more detail on that from the policymakers, even from the Reno company themselves, around the work that they are currently doing and intend to continue to do in the future in Grenada. From the physical planning unit, we've never had any luck in getting anyone from the physical planning unit to appear on the Bubb Report in respect of previous issues as well. So we're hoping with somebody from physical planning will be able to come to explain why no approval was given, or if in fact any approval was given for what is being constructed up there in Woodford. All of these questions need to be answered by the policymakers and the companies involved. So Prime Minister, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, as well as Honorable Andy Williams, and of course, Honorable Ron Redhead, if you want to come on and speak to those issues as well. Certainly, we would love having you as well. This is an open platform for everyone. I have no agenda here. I am on bot, and in this space, I'm neutral for a reason. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week.
Thank you.
Absolutely, viewers and listeners, this has been yet another episode of the Bubb Report. We went over a bit, but we started off with a very good segment with Wood and Meyer and ended on a bit of a serious note, both in respect of what is happening around the USAID aid freeze and its impact on the Caribbean and road infrastructure in the area. So we want to thank everyone, for all of our viewers and listeners, for continuing to support the Bubb Report. And we also want to remind you that in 2025, the Bubb Report will be celebrating its 5th anniversary of service to the national community in Grenada, with a major event that will be held at the Grenada Trade Center on the 22nd of May. We will be publishing much more information on that event on the occasion of our 5th anniversary, where we hope to honor some late journalists and broadcasters in Grenada, namely George Grant, Lou Smith, and Leslie Pear. You will be hearing much more details about that particular activity to be held in May at the Grenada Trade Center. So please stay tuned for that. So again, thank you, all of our viewers and listeners. And of course, for those of you over on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, those of you who watch the program on YouTube today, give us some likes so that the algorithm would be able to know to share this program with others who might not have had the opportunity to watch this program live. So thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. And on behalf of the producers of the program, I wish to thank all of you for taking part in the program this week. Take care. See you next week. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.